Hello everyone, Mason here. How you doing? Oh, time, you fickle beast. You trickle away, like grains of sand through open fingers. By which I mean, bloody hell, where did January go? Yeah, somehow the first month of the year is already in the rearview mirror, which means it's time for a wrap-up. So I'm going to tell you what I read this month and rank them from worst to best. Simple. Before we get to that, today's episode of Hello Everyone is sponsored by The Weaponry Warehouse. Swords, shields, spears, axes, maces, longbows, crossbows, laser guns. If you need to fight the innumerable hordes of a Dark Lord, don't purchase your arsenal one weapon at a time. Buy in bulk. The Weaponry Warehouse. If it's deadly, we've got one, and it's a bargain. So, I read 3 books this month. Coming in at number 3 is The Fixer by Claudia Carroll. First published in August 2021 with an average rating of 3.14 on Goodreads. The Fixer centres around Megan Monroe. It's kind of like that Will Smith movie Hitch, but in reverse. Basically, Megan is a freelance consultant, and if you have someone problematic in your life, Megan can get rid of them, but not in a murdery criminal sort of way, which, I'm not going to lie, is a shame, because that would have been a much more interesting book. Oh, Mason, what a surprise. You would have found the book more interesting if it had murder. Yeah, I would. Look, if this had been about a character like Mike from Breaking Bad who gets hired by various criminals to sort out their problems, that would have been a much more interesting story than the one we got. Right, so Meg lives in a big fancy flat because she's got loads of money. She's really good at inserting herself into a situation and removing the problematic element. If you've got an ex that just won't get the message, a friend that likes you more than you like them, a lazy employee, or an unwanted third party in your relationship, Meg can sort that out for you. Supposedly. The problem with The Fixer is it's one of those stories that focuses on a character during a time in their life when everything is going wrong, so even though we're told Meg is good at her job, we're never really shown that. Claudia Carroll goes to great lengths to make sure that you know Meg has a super fancy flat in the nicest part of town with a vast, wealthy, influential clientele that she's built up through word of mouth. But then, throughout the story, Meg consistently makes decisions that leave you wondering how she ever built up such a strong reputation. The thing is, this is one of those books that has the seeds of a story that I really like. Meg is this successful, driven woman who's worked her way up from humble beginnings. She's smart, very smart. She can make Sherlock-esque deductions about people which she uses to her advantage. She knows how to manipulate people and she uses that to solve her clients' problems. That's a good concept, I just didn't like the execution. Considering that she's demonstrably smart, Meg makes a lot of stupid decisions. The main problem she faces is a woman called Harriet, who she previously got rid of by convincing her to take a humanitarian job in Kenya, but now she's back and the mega wealthy client who first hired Meg to extract her from their life isn't happy. Harriet thinks that Meg is her best friend, so naturally when she returns from Kenya she thinks that Meg will give her a place to stay. She shows up in the dead of night, basically invites herself in and then proceeds to make herself at home in Meg's nice fancy flat. The flat is so fancy that Harriet doesn't quite understand how Meg can afford it. Did I mention it's fancy? Anyway, Meg is understandably breaking it because she knows the mega wealthy client ain't gonna be happy, but she's busy, so what does she do? Well, obviously, she goes to work and leaves Harriet unattended in the apartment. Despite supposedly being a professional, she forgets to take her work phone with her, and she leaves the super secret office door unlocked. Basically, she leaves Harriet with all the tools she needs to work out the awful truth. Here's the thing though, right? I think Harriet is supposed to be a likeable character, but she's not. Okay, yeah, she's this modest, selfless woman whose only crime was to fall in love with a billionaire playboy whose grandmother doesn't think she's good enough. She was duped and manipulated by a woman she thought was her very best friend in the whole wide world. I think we can all agree that's bad. However, the only reason there's a possibility of her finding out the truth is because she's unreasonably nosy. I've known my best mate Dan since we were in high school. We're close, but I wouldn't dream of doing the things that Harriet does when she's left unattended in Meg's apartment. She basically goes full-on private investigator mode for no reason. She roots around in places she has no business being in, including but not limited to Meg's bedroom, which is bad enough. Then she reads Meg's mail, which is straight up illegal, and then when she starts tidying up for some reason, she sees that the super secret office door has been left unlocked. She knows that Meg has left it open by mistake, but she still goes in there for a quick hoover up and a nosy round. It was just so out of order and unreasonable that I didn't like her, even though she was the one I was supposed to feel sorry for. Honestly, there was just so much about this book that didn't work for me. Later on, Harriet ends up talking to these lawyers for spoilery reasons, but despite the fact that they represent the wealthiest family in the world, they're nothing but a joke. The entire law firm is these two comically old men with a quaint little office who for some reason don't like to work in the afternoons, fall asleep at their desks, force Harriet to make them a cup of tea and then give her information that would surely be privileged. I just didn't believe for a single second that these two incompetent fools would be the lawyers chosen by a family that are worth billions with a corporate empire to run. Sorry mate, not buying it. There's also a part later on where Meg wants to steal something that would be incredibly useful from one of her clients, and she makes it blatantly obvious that that's what she's gonna do. She thinks she's being all clever and sneaky about it, but she's not. Not even slightly. Not even a little bit. I'm not entirely sure whose fault it is, the author or the narrator, but I found it hard to follow what was going on. The narrative jumped back and forth between Meg and Harriet, but I didn't find anything that distinguished them from one another and made them feel like distinct characters. Due to the fact that events are split between the present and 2 years ago, I also found it hard to work out what was happening when. There's also a few elements that are hammered home far too much, such as Meg's driving motivation, which ended up being mildly irritating towards the end. There was one part in particular where I wasn't sure what was going on. Either Meg was explaining her backstory to somebody in the most unnatural dialogue ever, or she was explaining it to the audience, again. It just felt forced and heavy-handed. In my opinion, one of two things would have made the story much better. Either the first third of the book needed to be the audience actually getting to see Meg be good at what she does by successfully completing one of the jobs for her client and outlining her skill set before things fall apart, or the book needed to be much shorter. I just didn't feel like there was enough meat on the bones to drag it out as long as it lasted. At one point I thought we were almost done, checked my phone, saw that there was over 3 hours left and couldn't believe it. I was gobsmacked. It's a shame because I did feel like it had a strong start and I was into it, but it never gained any momentum, I didn't connect with the characters, and in the end, I just found it a bit annoying and stressful to listen to, especially because the entire point of the story was supposed to be Meg learning a lesson that I didn't feel she learned. This one gets a strong thumbs down from me. Before we move on to the next book, I just want to give a quick shout out to Tatiana from Reading with Tatiana, who celebrated her first Booktube birthday this month. Congratulations, mate! If you're not familiar with Tatiana's channel, you should be, so I'll leave a link in the description and you should definitely go and check it out. You won't regret it, I promise. Okay, at number 2 we've got The Key to My Heart by Lia Lewis, first published on the 6th of December 2022 and narrated by Victoria Fox, with a surprisingly high rating of 4.13. The reason I'm surprised that the rating is so high isn't because I didn't like the book, because I actually quite enjoyed it, but I didn't think that it was anything particularly special, and I've got a sneaking suspicion that it won't be that memorable. There is a nice heart to the story which centres around 33-year-old Natalie Fincher, a young widow who's been immobilised by grief after losing her husband 2 years previously. It's impossible to not empathise with Natalie because she's just stuck. She's living in a dilapidated cottage in desperate need of a renovation, and she doesn't necessarily want to continue living there, but she feels too guilty to leave because her husband, Russ, loved the place. It's like Natalie is stuck in some sort of limbo because it's been 2 years since Russ died, which is somehow too long and not long enough all at once. She's surrounded by reminders of what she had and what she could have had. She's not quite ready to let Russ go yet, which is understandable, but her friends and family want her to be happy. They want her to get back out there and start rebuilding herself. In other words, they want her to move on. They do have good intentions. At the end of the day, it's gotta be hard seeing your daughter, your sister, your best friend grieving, and they just want her to get better, but they go about it in the wrong way, and that puts Natalie under a lot of pressure. I enjoyed the exploration of Natalie's situation. A woman who's unsure of who she is now, of who she's going to be moving forward, trying to figure out which aspects of herself she wants to hold on to and rediscover, and which she needs to let go of. The central premise of the story is that Natalie was an aspiring musician who came very close to finding success, but the grief she felt after losing Russ put a stop to that dream. Now she enjoys the anonymity of playing at a public piano in a train station, except there's something weird going on. Somebody's been leaving sheet music at the piano for Natalie to find, but the songs all share a significance to Natalie and Russ's relationship, so she's not sure what's going on, but she can't help but wonder, maybe even hope, that Russ is finding some cosmic way of reaching out. That mystery drives the story forward. However, despite the fact that there are some moving and poignant moments, it's not all perfect. That central mystery is the thing that's supposed to draw us in as an audience. We're supposed to be invested in finding out the truth, just like Natalie is. The problem is, it's not that mysterious. There aren't many suspects. In fact, there's really only 4 possible candidates, characters A, B, C and D. Unfortunately, character A comes under suspicion far too early, which makes it blatantly obvious it's not going to be them, and I was fairly sure it wasn't going to be character B, which only leaves C and D. Then about halfway through, we get a scene that telegraphs the truth so clearly that it's kinda weird that Natalie doesn't clock it right then and there. I also wasn't a massive fan of a subplot where there was an issue between Natalie and another character that felt a bit pointless and melodramatic. I just wasn't quite sure why it was there, and I don't think the story would have been missing anything without it. On top of that, the story also bows down to the conventional formula of needing the misunderstanding. I get why authors do it, I'll probably even do it myself at some point, but until that day I'll continue to say that the misunderstanding trope should just go away. Nah, they're not always bad, although it is probably a 70-30 split in favour of irritation, but this time around we got 2 of them, and they were both the sort of misunderstanding that could be easily avoided/resolved if the characters involved were just, reasonable. Basically, there was some stuff I liked and some stuff that I wasn't too fussed for, but nothing that I loved and nothing that I hated. It was easy to listen to and enjoyable enough at the time, with Victoria Fox putting in a decent performance, but it hasn't stuck with me. I pretty much haven't thought about it since I finished it, other than right now, but that's only because I'm reviewing it, and I've got a sneaking suspicion that in a couple of months I'll have forgotten it completely. In the end, this gets a solid, right-angled middle thumb. It was just fine. We'll get to number 1 in just a second, but first, a couple of shout-outs. This morning I woke up to a notification that Margaret Pennard has put out a triple tag video, including the wishful thinking tag, which was created by yours truly, and I'm looking forward to getting to that. If you're looking for some buddy reads, Becky from Teacup the Storyteller has a video where she outlines all the books she's hoping to read this year, and there's a lot of them, so jump on board. Very Literary Kari and my Regency era style pen pal Lady Jane Books had a discussion about The Wolf and the Watchman for the Black Hearts Book Club. To be honest, it sounds like the sort of book I should stay away from. If it's so dark that Kari and Jane thought it was a bit disturbing, it would probably turn me into a trembling puddle of nerves. I've also been diving into Holly Rhiannon's content. She's got some super useful writing tips, interesting discussions, and a new series on how to write short stories, which I'm sure I'll utilise to the best of my abilities. If you're not aware, Holly and the enigmatic Pay from Attention are starting a new publishing press, and they're going to be putting out an anthology which will feature author-tubers. If either of you is watching this, I just want to say congratulations and wish you the best of luck for the future, because I think what you're doing is awesome. As always, the relevant links to all these shoutouts will be in the description. Right then, at number 1 we've got Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian Mcallister, narrated by Leslie Sharp and first published on the 2nd of August 2022 with a 4.1 average rating. This one is technically a murder mystery. I know, it's shocking, but it also has time travel. It centres around Jen, who witnesses her 18-year-old son Tom commit murder. There's no what ifs or maybe nots, it definitely happened. Jen witnessed it with her own 2 eyes. Her son, her intelligent, charming, caring son, killed a man, right there on the street, outside their family home. That's where things get strange though, because when an exhausted, devastated Jen eventually crawls into bed and falls asleep, she wakes up in yesterday. After that, it happens again and again. Somehow, Jen is jumping backwards along her own timeline, and there's only one thing to do: discover the truth behind what could drive her son to murder, and try her best to stop it from happening. Yeah, that's right, murder and time travel. 2 of my favourite things in the world. I phrased that all wrong, didn't I? I'm probably on some sort of list now. Oh well. What makes Wrong Place, Wrong Time such an interesting story to me is that it takes the concept of hindsight and flips it on its head. When something terrible happens, we obsess over the explanation. We need to know the reasons why. What did we miss? What did we do wrong? What could we have done to stop it? Rather than conforming to the tried and tested formula of having the main character launch their own investigation, which can get annoying because you either end up wanting that character to just let the police do their job, or the police get relegated to being about as useful as a headless toothbrush, Gillian Mcallister does something different. The fact that Jen is being catapulted back through time allows her to pay more attention, to relive and re-examine these seemingly inconsequential moments that she missed the first time around, either because she wasn't present or didn't think anything of it. At the same time, there's this sense of overwhelming futility because there's nothing she can do. Each time she sleeps, she wakes up further into the past, and anything she tries has been undone. Now, when it comes to the actual mechanics, if you're a seasoned time travel veteran, like myself, I don't think that you'll find anything groundbreaking that nobody's ever tried before. Where this story shines is the exploration of Jen as a mother. Jen blames herself, which makes sense because she's a mother and that's what they do. Tom is her son. He's her responsibility. She raised him, so in some way, she must be to blame. She must have failed somehow. Was she selfish and self-absorbed? Did she focus on her career too much? Did she make Tom feel ignored or unloved in some way? The nature of the time travel and the unfolding mystery is what makes this a page-turner. It's the hook. But that theme of a mother's love and the exploration of how culpable Jen is for Tom's actions is what gives this story a heart. It's what stops it from being another empty thriller. It's got a nice pace to it that keeps you reading as you gather the clues and piece the mystery together in reverse, following the timeline back right to the inciting incident, and there's some decent twists. A few caught me off guard, but I got ahead of the last one. It's ironic that this is the best book of the month, and yet I have the least to say about it because it's actually quite good and I don't want to spoil anything. Rest assured, if you're looking for an intriguing mystery with some emotional depth and a little sprinkling of sci-fi, I think you'll like this one. It gets a solid thumbs up from me. In terms of the narrators, I'd probably rank Victoria Fox at the bottom, not because she was bad, but because she was just sort of average. I'd definitely still listen to another book with her as the narrator though. Despite the fact that I really didn't enjoy The Fixer, I did think that Philippa Dunn did a good job. She was easy to listen to, and I did think that she gave Meg a likeable attitude until the story turned me against her. Leslie Sharp comes in at the top because I didn't even really think of her as a narrator, it was just perfectly believable that she was Jen. So, all in all, that was a pretty decent reading month. But the beauty of being a mood reader is I have no idea what I'm going to read next, and I'm quite looking forward to seeing where these 3 books rank as the year progresses. My question of the day is a choice. I have 2 boxes. Inside one is a wonderful treat. Inside the other is a gruesome surprise. That's right, it's not Halloween, but it's still trick-or-treat time. You can be daring and open one of the boxes, or play it safe and leave them both locked. A, B, or neither. Choose wisely. Have you enjoyed this video? If so, the like and subscribe buttons are just sitting there, waiting to be pressed. Now press 'em, or I'll send you back in time to get chomped by a ravenous dinosaur. If you've got thoughts to share, or just want to say hi, you know where the comment section is, and you can join the discussions in the dark Discord server. Link in the description. Thanks ever so much for spending time with me today, guys. Until next time, take care. For now, I'm off, and you should have a good one.